my brothers have been getting me more into R&B rap, which I don't know why I neglected for so long because there's so much good stuff out there. And especially when so many like bigger artists nowadays are just like they're into anime too. And I'm like, why shouldn't I be listening to Bad Bunny? He's just as much of a weeb as me and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, some of that kind of catches me off guard when you see these big stars doing like random cosplay or they're talking about anime and it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, wow, really? Like I was getting bullied in high school for liking this stuff and all y'all are just,
Oh, I know.
treating like it's normal." Okay. It's cool.
This was one last tiny thing that even in orchestra, sometimes I didn't find it fun. Like I wear like a Kingdom Hearts 2 t-shirt to orchestra class and they're like, oh, why are you wearing that? And I'm like, listen, guys, I like Kingdom Hearts. It's a good time. Um, but yeah, that's the other fun part where like music people, I feel like only kind of stick to music stuff. And it's hard to find people that love anime and like or have other interests outside of just like being in the practice room, like practicing all day, sort of thing. Or at least that's how it was at my college. But
It was
I
like that
think
with
times
me.
are definitely changing. Mm,
It was like that with me too. I agree with you where it's like it's hard to meld music, especially traditional styles of music, with your love of anime and like trying to even balance that in your everyday life. I spent 3 or 4 years trying to be a professional musician, and like I was a professional musician for some time. I was able to play gigs. I traveled a bit. I got to have a lot of really cool experiences, and I was also one of those fortunate musicians where my first gig was to like my friends and my family, and my second gig was to like thousands of people. And then afterwards, like
oh
every gig
wow.
afterwards, it kind of like I would have private parties with a couple hundred, and then I would have another gig with like, 2,000, 3,000 people, and for me that was the norm. But then, like you said, you have to really put aside a lot of what you do in order to be at that level, in order to keep on getting calls for gigs and keep on backing up this musician and that musician and getting opportunities. And by doing that, I sacrifice a lot of my time with my friends. I sacrifice a lot of what I wanted to do with
Mm,
anime. I had to put anime to the side because I was trying to balance college so I can have a backup plan if music doesn't work, and I'm trying to work with this
right.
artist, and I have 3 songs to write, and it's very, very, very hard to balance. And just the fact that even if you wanted to take half an hour to talk about anime or something, a lot of the older heads, especially within the guitar community and the synth keyboard community, they don't do that. They don't talk about that. They find it weird when you wear an anime style T-shirt. There's no way I can show up with these earrings
Mm.
on stage with certain people that I backed up because they tell me like no
Oh,
weird shit allowed. And it's like now the attitude has changed, so I'm
mm.
happy to see it change and more people are accepting or they're into anime. But like totally, I completely see where you're coming from. It was so hard to kind of integrate your personality with the traditional sense of what music was, and I hope going forward that that's not a difficulty for younger musicians.
Mm. I agree with you. And I mean, and one thing with orchestra too is that because there's so many, I feel like I know it's people consider it a stereotype, but there's a lot of Asian players in orchestras, and some people like they just see anime and get disgusted, or even like someone like me cosplaying like half Latino, half white, and being like, "Oh, you're creepy, you're weird, or you must feel a certain way about Asian people, and that's the only reason why you're into that stuff." And I don't think that's true at all. And there's a percentage of people like that, but I feel like it's a lot smaller of a minority than people think. And to kind of generalize cosplayers, even anime fans, as just being creepy people who think of Asian people a certain way, make certain stereotypes about them, like infantize them, I think is wrong, honestly.
Oh, it really is. I live in a city where like the population has always been predominantly Asian, and it has only grown to be
Mm,
more and more Asian over time, which is completely fine. But like that is, I don't know, that's maybe not a difficulty many people experience today, but it's something that I experience. Like I like basketball, I like rap, basically all of the things that I stereotypically would like. But then when I would talk
mm,
about anime, all of a sudden people would be very suspect. and they would look at me and they'd think
Right.
are you trying to capitalize on this growing thing within Asian culture that we created? Are you weird? Are you are you a weeaboo? Like before, like weeb and weeaboo were like really bad terms. Otaku was what we would go by because at least it
Oh,
had some
yeah.
semblance of respect. But like when people would throw weeb in your
Mhm.
face, it's like I like Japanese culture, I like Spanish culture, I like European culture, I like different cultures, and I should be able to express myself without any sort of flack, especially when you can see it's like my intentions are pure. But in 2008, 2010,
Right.
that wasn't necessarily the narrative for people that were non-Asian trying to
Yeah.
embrace this like Asian thing. So I completely get
Mhm.
where you're coming from.
Or even now thinking about the way I phrased it too, it's more like it takes effort and it takes time to really educate yourself on how not to be that weird person who's like only going after Asian girls or like saying, oh, my favorite food is sushi because my favorite, some people even will go to say, like, oh, I wish I was Japanese. I wish I was Asian because of how much they're just not taking the time to really understand that they're people just like us. And so like in some ways, like we're putting it on such a pedestal that like you're not seeing it as like part of your own reality. I'm I feel like I'm not explaining this as well as I should. I'm like trying to think this through, but it takes time to truly like understand a culture and respect it and realize it's like they're people just like us and that they should be treated as such and not as something to infantilize, sexual, over sexualize, disrespect, even get violent towards if they're not meeting your fantasy or whatever. Like that to me, it takes time. And obviously, I know, I feel like a lot of people always have like a cringy weeaboo stage, but I feel like I get more respect out of people who take the time to really understand the cultures that they appreciate and love so much and respect. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I had my cringy weeaboo stage. I did, but I had it pretty young. I had it like before I was 10. Like I used to, and even like looking
No,
back,
yeah.
I don't think it was like a cringy weeaboo stage as much as it was like this was my first interaction with a culture that wasn't West Indian culture or Canadian culture. So
Right.
the shock of it and how impressed and I was and how impressionable I was as a kid, it kind of did dictate the future of like my hobbies and my interests. But also like I was very much into comics and other things, so it's like I do see where they're coming from when they're like people are very untrustworthy towards like just people coming into this culture and trying to embrace it fully and the food and everything else,
Right.
not just the anime, but also like I don't know. It's a very slippery slope. It's an interesting conversation though.
Yeah.